I'm Katherine Bekker-Smith, strengths coach, team facilitator. I'm passionate about StrengthsFinder. I wanted to rebrand Soul Center. I had this dream, as I said to you, about opening a wellness center. In 2019, I registered Soul Center. And I went to go and see an old Unilever colleague of mine about helping me to brand my business. Anyway, she said, well, why don't you do your StrengthsFinder? Because it'll be a really great place to start. And that unlocked such a journey. We use strengths as the language and the tool to create conversations. Some of my tools and techniques have come from personal experience. But at the end of the day, it's about leveraging what we're good at. But it's about looking at how can I do what I do well, even better. The core of everything is about knowing who we are. We need to know who we are, and then everything else flows from that.
Okay, before we get into this conversation, I know we're itching, but I wanted to give the two teams that make this podcast happen a quick shout out. Firstly, my team from Kythe Creative. You guys are amazing. You guys are incredible. We produce high quality, high end podcasts just like this one and a few others that you've seen floating around on the internet. Secondly, we are in Tim Africa's studios. Tim Africa looks after the publishing, the performance marketing, and the distribution of this show and the content. So thank you to you guys for making this happen. I am also very proud to say that Kythe Creative and Tim Africa have strategically partnered to offer you, the listeners, and to people who want to create content just like this, a full house end-to-end podcast solution. Everything from strategy to production to post-production, publishing and performance marketing. We take care of it all. So if you want to start making meaningful content and content that connects with an audience and builds trust, give us a shout and let's start making something together. Let's get back to this episode. You have Soul Center.
I do.
And you are a coach to executives, to teams. Can you tell us quickly about that?
I'm passionate about StrengthsFinder. The Clifton Gallup, it's changed its name a few times, but it's run by an international American business by the name of Gallup, and it's well known. But in addition to that, I also studied neuro-linguistics, and I studied the Louise Hay Heal Your Life modality. So I do bring quite a few of those modalities into some of my coaching sessions. So generally how it works is let's say if we were going to work with your team, I would coach each person using the StrengthsFinder assessment tool. And then we would do a team strengths into action, we could call it, or team effectiveness. Depends on where the team is. So a lot of the teams I've worked with have either been in kind of a forming stage, and then the approach would be slightly different. But at the end of the day, it's about leveraging what we're good at. Because all of our lives, we go, if we're not good at maths, and our parents rush out, bless their hearts, but they give us, extra lessons. And we always focus on the gaps. I'm not saying that there isn't room to improve. And yes, there's always performance improvement, but it's about looking at how can I do what I do well, even better.
I've done my StrengthsFinder twice, a long time ago. Okay. Long time ago. And I actually looked them up again this morning.
Okay, out of curiosity.
So in 2000, when I first did it in 2000, and I'm trying to remember, it was over 10 years ago. Okay. So it must have been 2012, probably 2012, 2013. It was belief, woo, self-assurance, connectedness, and what was the other one? I made my note here. What was it? Belief, connectedness, communication, woo, and self-assurance.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. And then the second time around, 2 of them dropped off and another 2 slipped in there. And I don't remember. I couldn't find those results. I think it was in my old work email. So
what's interesting is we can retrieve that, and what Gallup have done, because they've made some modifications and adjustments to their app, we could actually combine those 2.
Oh wow!
Yeah, we can merge those 2.
Because you have a top
reports.
8, don't you?
You have a top 10,
okay.
And then we can even unlock your 34. Because often what people say, well, will it have changed? If I've done it 10 years ago, and essentially who you are, at the core of who you are, doesn't change. So maybe the order would have changed, like you said, 2 dropped off, but they're probably sitting at your 8 or 9.
They were sitting at the like 6 and 7 or whatever they were.
Yeah. So because it's measuring our innate talent that we're born with. So
what are your top strengths?
I have input. Okay, so
input. Okay,
gather a lot of information and lots of relationships. So what's interesting is we have connectedness in common. So that's my number 3. So I have input. I have arranger. Can move lots of moving parts. Can be a good thing when it's played to its strength as opposed to too many moving parts. So what am I? Input, arranger, connectedness, strategic, and activator.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Activator is where the coaching comes in, right?
Well, activator just wants to get going.
Okay.
And I've had to really lean into my strategic a lot more and go, okay, have I really interrogated this properly before leaping? Because, and that's the good thing, which is why I opened my soul center, because I really believe that I had a vision that I do believe it comes from God, about a bigger purpose, which I suppose plays into the connectedness. But I could have potentially done a little bit more homework before just leaping. So that's why, it's looking at, are we playing too much to one strength and downplaying others, or not dialing them up enough? Yeah. But and at different times in our lives, we might need to dial one up more than the other. Or, that's why I love the journey about it, because there are just so many layers to it.
Absolutely. It's all these personality testing and typings are very interesting. We've also worked quite a bit with the Enneagram.
It's also very powerful.
I have personally found for myself very powerful in understanding, knowing myself. I don't know if you've ever looked into any of Jordan Peterson's stuff.
I do follow him.
Also very interesting, his self-authoring program, and that very interesting too. But for me, the Enneagram and then this has been, and then there's the Myers-Briggs, and then there's the...
Myers-Briggs is, I think, always going to be a solid, And it's interesting because what you're saying, actually at the core of everything, it's about knowing who we are.
Yeah.
Because when we know who we are, which plays obviously into identity, and then depending on where people's spiritual beliefs lie, but having that connection to, I believe, it has to be to... That's my belief, but to God. But for whoever's belief, it has to anchor us, and we need to know who we are. And then everything else flows from that.
I often say, and my wife and I often discuss this, and we often say that our first job is to work on ourselves. Before we work on our kids, and before we try even attempt working on each other, we work on ourselves first.
Yeah.
So, on that theme,
yeah.
When did you do your first Gallup StrengthsFinder test?
And such an interesting story, because I wanted to rebrand Soul Center, because on LinkedIn, I go by my name, Katherine Bekker-Smith, and then I had this dream, as I said to you, about opening a wellness center. And in 2019, I registered Soul Center, and I went to go and see an old Unilever colleague of mine who's also a marketing and branding specialist. Her name's Kath Tucker, so I'll talk about her because her and my journey have been so interconnected. Anyway, so I went to go and see Kath about helping me to brand my business. I said to her, Kath, how do I present Soul Center and who I am in the corporate space? Anyway, she said, well, why don't you do your StrengthsFinder, because it'll be a really great place to start. And that unlocked such a journey.
Okay.
To the point where she and I have actually got quite a big client in common that we work together on. It started with one team 3 years ago, and has just, caught like a wildfire, because people are starting to see how much impact it's making in their teams, to the point where I had to phone her and say, Kath, I can't actually do all the workshops on my own or all the coaching on my own. And that's where that's the power of strengths.
Discovering StrengthsFinder has just transformed your life, transformed business. I'm sure you've seen it transform the lives and the businesses of other people.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done the empirical data, and there is a Q12 questionnaire that you can do with teams to measure because there's clear return on investment. But I just go on what feedback people give me, and then what the line manager says in terms of how they see their team interacting with each other and the collaboration. And actually at the heart of it, it's what we spoke about at the beginning, is about trust. So we use strengths as the language and the tool to create conversations, because I think what people struggle with the most is giving honest feedback. And so then if you can use, my children will say to me, oh my gosh, Mom, your arranger is super dialed up right now. We're going here for Christmas, then we're going there for Christmas. Could you just keep us in the loop? And that is obviously the trip up on the arranger, is it can leave people behind because their brains work super fast and they're handling multiple things. And so then
it's a superpower.
It can be, but if it's, it's got to be obviously held and contained. But if teams find someone in their team with a ranger and they find that person frustrating, they might not understand why. So then you can give the person feedback to say, okay, I feel like your ranger's like a little bit dialed up at the moment. Could we perhaps bring it back a tad? You can only do that from a foundation of trust.
I want to get to the trust thing and using StrengthsFinders and your strengths. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey pre-2019? Just so we get an understanding of your background. It's just a bit of like who you are.
So let me backtrack. And so I came out of varsity with a social science degree, which really doesn't exist anymore, and an honours in business administration. And then I started at Unilever in the...
So that's the Ranger in business administration. I'm just going to point that out there.
I actually hadn't made that connection, but yes. Yeah. And then I started in the HR department and worked for Unilever for about 6 or 7 years. Then we took 5 years while we were I was on sabbatical, becoming a mum, which was just another really amazing journey. And we traveled and we got the experience of working abroad. But my heart was always back in South Africa, and I really wanted to come back here to make a difference. How that was going to transpire, I didn't know. But then, as I said, I worked for Vulindlela for 5 years for the first project where we rolled out this really big transformation program across one of the big banking institutions. And then at the end of that 5 years, I kind of thought, well, you know what, maybe I need to go back into corporate. I just felt the drawback to go back. So I took an HR director role for an online marketing company where I started to learn about SEO and all these things that happen in the back end, which was, a whole new world and very exciting. And post that, I moved back to Durban, and I actually worked because I got divorced in between all of those career moves, and got married a second time, which was really exciting, and found love, and it was a whole fairy tale. I started working in my husband's family business, which took a bit of HR, a bit of marketing, a bit of all sorts. So it was actually really nice because it was the general business experience. Yeah. And then what did I do after? And I did quite a lot of community work because I'm really passionate about, like I said, trying to make a difference in my small way. I worked for Partners for Possibility for a year, with partnering with a principal in an underprivileged school so that I could impart my business experience with her and she could impart her knowledge of community and collaboration. And that was really a very, very challenging project because it was during COVID, but at the same time rewarding. What else have I done?
You've done a whole bunch of traveling.
Done a lot of traveling, and yes, and then in between, just to also improve what I can offer to people. And it was born out of the place when my dad passed away in 2015 from colon cancer. And my sister and I so desperately, through diet, wanted to try and reverse the cancer, And I do believe that through diet and through healing trauma, that was actually where my whole journey started, about understanding the mind-body-spirit connection and trying to heal. And I mean, look, we sadly, it was diagnosed quite late. And we tried all the green juices, and we really tried our very best, and through prayer and so much prayer. But you also realize that was the journey that, he needed to go on, was the journey we needed to go on as a family. But it did get me very, very interested in our spiritual life and about how we treat our bodies and what we feed our bodies. And then that's when I decided to study the Louise Hay modalities and looking into inner child shadow work and trauma and the NLP, where we can really rewire our neural pathways. Yeah. So I don't know, I guess if I look at the thread, it's always been about what are our thoughts? What is the power of language? Because it's like some fun fact about me. I do speak a few languages.
Okay. How many languages do you talk or speak?
Well, 3 probably really well. And another 2 relatively well for conversation purposes.
So which 5 are those?
So I can speak English and Afrikaans.
Yes.
I can speak a reasonable amount of Zulu to get me through the gate sometimes when I don't have my driver's license, something like that. And then I speak relatively good Spanish and reasonable French.
That is very cool.
Yeah, but you know what it is? The underlying thing is the power of language and how do we connect with people? How do we understand who you are and how you tick? And that's always been my thing. I really love people and want to see the best, because I didn't always believe in myself. I know that sounds really weird, but that was a whole journey of figuring out who I am, what is my value, what do I offer. And that's probably why I'm so passionate about identity work and knowing who we are so we can be the best version of ourselves.
Let's talk about what tools you use. You've mentioned the Gallup StrengthsFinder.
Yeah.
You've mentioned NLP.
Yeah.
You've mentioned which I'm actually quite interested in, is the think, what's it called?
With our thoughts, energy follows thought.
Yes, the think, time to think.
Yeah,
Is it called Time to Think?
Well, yes, I am trained in the Nancy Klein Time to Think. That was actually when I worked on the Partners for Possibility project. We were really trained in amazing modalities, and that being one of them, as well as how to contract, which was...
what do you mean by that?
So, like, often we have expectations, and that's where the frustrations will come in. So you might have an expectation of me that I need to reply to emails within, let's say, 48 hours. Mm-hmm. But maybe you've never verbalized that to me. Mm-hmm. So I work in your team, and then you get frustrated because, like, why is Kath not timing us on her replies? And it's an unexpressed or uncommunicated expectation. So we can recontract. And obviously we have our KPIs, we have our job descriptions, we have all of those things that are understood. But these are the more subtle, I don't know, the ones that are unspoken, but in our head and then not in the other person's head. If you and I were to have a coffee and you say, Kath, you know what, I'm finding that my expectation of you is to reply to an email within 48 hours, and I'm finding that, you know, your response time is quite slow. That's you and I contracting a way of working with each other. And it can be on anything. It could be on 2 days working from home and 3 days in the office, and there are going to be certain days that need to be in the office that are the same as everybody else's, so that we're not having some people in the building on Teams calls with, you know, so it can be all of those things. But I find that when we're clear about expectations, then there can be no misunderstanding. And that goes over and above what our KPIs are, or, you know, what our job description is.
It's all about managing expectations, to sum it up. Okay. Yeah, which is very important, because I found, even with doing client work and even relationships, husband, wife, children, it's like, let's just manage the expectations so that we're all on the same page. So you come in and you help businesses do that. Yeah,
so my first thing that I usually do is I'll meet with the line manager and ask, what are their objectives? You know, what do they want to achieve with their team? But you asked me, how can I help small business owners out there? And this thing about knowing ourselves. So the first cornerstone of leadership is that knowing of ourselves, because that's how we can self-regulate. So when somebody says something that is triggering for us, for whatever reason, be it because it's the way that they've said it, you know, in terms of tone of voice or the, you know, the communication style, that we have that moment to pause. So Viktor Frankl used that very famous quote, you know, between stimulus and response, we need that pause. And we can only pause when we are regulated, and we can only regulate it when we know ourselves. You know, and so it comes back to when we know who we are, we can be much more effective leaders. And then we can then build the team. You know, for me, that's kind of how the building blocks go. And if we need to do the inner work in order for our outer game, so Kath and I both really love tennis, and we use tennis as an analogy often, because I think the other sports have been used a lot. And it's about speaking authentically about something that I love and I'm passionate about. But in that big match temperament, you know, if we haven't done our inner work, we can't, or it's like the inner game, then your outer game isn't going to kind of perform on court. And you can use that metaphor for business.
It's about helping the person work at their full potential, but you can only work at your full potential if you understand who you are. It's the whole thing of aligning the way of your being with the truth of your being. So when you understand who you truly are, we get to align the way of who we are and what we do.
Absolutely.
Do you find we often mistake what we do with who we are?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So often we'll say to people in one of the coaching conversations, describe who you are without referring to your job or your title or your qualifications. Like, who are you? You know, and so that's a really good starting point, because that is so telling. And I listen for cues in language. You know, and so then that will give me insight into, okay, where do we need to start with this particular process to help the person unlock who they are? Because a lot of the time we have a kind of an unconscious narrative that runs through. And, you know, people use that term imposter syndrome quite a lot. So they feel like, gosh, I've been promoted, or here I'm running my own business. And there are days when I'm not sure if I'm actually strategically aligned, or if I'm even keeping up with modern AI trends, so we have that silent conversation going on in our own head. And unless we do have someone who we can bounce it off, who we trust, and it can be our marital partner, but it could also be a really good business partner, or could be a good colleague if people don't have their own coach. And I mean, I'm not trying to advocate that everyone should have a coach, although of course I do think that there's value in that.
Oh, there's huge value in it,
Yeah. But the point about those unconscious narratives that run through our mind, where does that imposter syndrome come from? It comes from a sense of who am I and am I worthy? And then we've got to go to, okay, so where did that come from? Why do we not feel worthy?
Very interesting. I recently, with my business coach, we were working, the imposter syndrome thing came up, and she dug deep there, and I was like, stop it. It's not fun at all. But by digging deeper and doing the work on yourself has really unlocked a whole bunch of stuff for me. And I mean, just to speak openly, even for the listeners, like part of the imposter syndrome was actually, it was a fear-based response. And I was projecting my insecurities and my fears onto the world around me and the people around me. And I had to deal with that. It wasn't that, this person's doing that or this group's doing this to us. It's actually not. And I have the tendency, being the Enneagram type 9 is to avoid conflict and avoid this. And it's like you go into your shell. And that's my constant fight, is to not withdraw. And the moment I'm withdrawing is when I start feeling like an imposter.
Sure.
So that's the withdrawal mechanism. Yeah, that's the insight. That's like, okay, I'm feeling like an imposter now. I'm going to withdraw. And it's like, no. Now's the time to step forwards. So it's hard work.
It is hard work.
It's really hard work.
Yeah.
But it's so worth it.
You know what, Luke? I really appreciate your vulnerability. And I think that everyone who's listening is going to go, that's really brave. And we do it. So you use the word fear, and fear is the flip of faith, because we're fearing something that we potentially can't see. And so too is faith. And so if we flip that and go, well, what if I am held? And what if I leap and there is a net?
Completely.
And there's a massive, huge, big net who holds the whole world, And so it takes bravery, which is what you did.
Yeah.
And then look at what that unlocked.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was this meme, I'm sure you've seen it go around on social media. It's like, when I'm doing my inner work, I'm sitting in the kind of Zen cross-legged position and I'm chanting or meditating, and, I've got candles burning and it's all beautiful and pretty. And it's actually not. The inner work that you're talking about is heart-wrenching, it's deep, and it sometimes takes us into the dark.
Okay, guys, 10 seconds of your time. Please like, share, and subscribe to this show on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Doing this will help the show grow and more people will discover our amazing stories. Back to today's episode. So, I want to encourage listeners to do the hard work. So maybe on that, Kath, what are some ways that, us as business owners, as leaders of teams, how can we begin that journey? How can people do that?
Okay, so there's a few options. And honestly, for people who know me and they'll know my story, I'm certainly not sitting here like I have it all right and I've got it all right. There have been many times where I would lose it and my children would say, but Mom, you're a coach and you work in this space. So I'm definitely not trying to say like I've got it all together and get it right all the time. I have the awareness now and I have the tools. And so that's why I always say to people, we can always become a better version of ourselves as long as we're willing. So for me, that's the first part. It's do we want to do it? Because we want to do it, not because anyone else is saying we should. Because the shoulds and the schmuds, it's like, we all should lose weight. We should run 10Ks. Okay.
Should doesn't get us anywhere.
Exactly. So if I could if I wanted to, because that's my own personal free will and choice. So we start there. Then we look at the tools and I go, okay, I can either do my Enneagram or I can do my StrengthsFinder or I can do my Myers-Briggs. So go to someone who's trained in any of those, because I think those are 3 really powerful tools. Then and I mentioned to you earlier that I'm under an associateship with New Miller and Associates, which is about shifting from performance to presence. So again, it goes back to all our conditioned stories that society puts on us. That says, we have to be this by a certain age, and we have to have a white picket fence and 2 little dogs, and I don't know what the stories are that run through us, but it puts so much pressure on performance that we forget to be present. And then in that time we might lose connection with our partners or lose connection with our children. That is an option that works through all the different layers and gets us back to who we are in terms of our identity, and unpacks some of the masks that we might be wearing of, I need to have it all together. We all have different masks. So it's getting into the layers of that. You could come to me for 1 or 2 coaching sessions, and depending on how willing and how open someone is, we can explore some of the neuro-linguistic pathways and rewrite the old stories, because at every opportunity we can create new neural pathways. There's more intense work. I have a network, a really, really powerful network of sound healers, breathwork practitioners, equine therapy. I've been doing amazing work with 2 equine conscious facilitators.
Okay.
Yeah, and the horses have got consciousness and hearts that are 7 times bigger than our energy field. And the work we've been doing out on a farm in Fairview and also on a farm in Moy River is so powerful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I could talk for hours and that's why I opened Soul Center, because I wanted to create a space where there would be every kind of practitioner, from breathwork to sound therapy to the fascia fitness and using the aerial yoga hammocks, because that releases the trauma that's stored somatically in the body.
Aerial yoga.
Yeah,
tell us about that.
Okay, well, I've closed the studio now, but my friend Heidi is still running her fascia fitness studio in Ballito. And there's other ways of doing it. There's myofascial balls through yoga, normal stretching yoga, not using the aerial yoga hammocks. But it's a way of releasing the fascia, which is our connective tissue. That's amazing. You float in that hammock at the end and you just go, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm back in the womb, from where we all felt so safe as tiny little beings before we popped into the world. It's an amazing experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of my absolute favorite things to do, and I try to do it once a month, is in Morningside.
Okay.
Or is it Glenwood? I think it's Morningside. There is at Spa Wellness Center. And we're gonna get her on the podcast.
Okay.
She runs a center called Float Wellness.
Okay.
And they have sensory deprivation pods.
Oh, wow.
And you get into this pod and it's body temperature, so you don't feel anything. And you literally float because it's got filled with Epsom salts. There's no sound, there's no light, there's no smell. You're completely deprived of your senses for 60 minutes to 90 minutes.
Wow.
It is bliss. It is absolute bliss. And it's like, for me, that's like my safe space. It's like, no one can contact you. And you literally just, if you could float in space and not die because of the physics or non-physics, like that would be it.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I think I have to go and find this space.
I will give you their contact details.
Wow.
But I think everyone should have a spin. And it's just, it's that thing of like taking yourself back to like your origin. And it's like, okay.
And feeling safe. That was the key word. I think.
Feeling safe and feeling like you can just exist, because we have to be all these things to all these people while trying to remain true to yourself. But it's I can just be. I can just lie there and breathe. And you slip into this like semi-conscious state. I have heard people doing meditation and like some meditation work inside there, and I've heard people having like trances in these things. But whether I trance or not is another story. But I just love to slip into a semi-conscious state, and it's apparently the equivalent of having 4 hours of sleep, like deep sleep.
So it's cellular rejuvenation on another level.
Yeah.
Wow.
it's just pure magic. So you should have a spin. You should go.
Yeah, so it's funny that you use the word spin because I did the Artist's Way with another 2 friends of mine who were the facilitators of that. That's also another powerful tool for, you were asking like what are the things that people can do out there. It's the book that Julia Cameron wrote and sold millions of copies and inspired the movie Eat, Pray, Love.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing book. So this friend of mine who runs the program, what you've got to do is you've got to take yourself on an artist's play date once a week, with no cell phone, no friends, nobody, just with yourself. And one of the play dates we went on was in the fascia studio in Ballito. And that's what then got me like, oh my gosh, this feeling is so amazing. So now I'm thinking, I need to take myself on a play date to the float studio.
Absolutely. So now that we went down that rabbit hole, let's come back to the very practical StrengthsFinder. Okay, because I've experienced it myself. I've worked a tiny bit. I've had clients who have been StrengthsFinder coaches, and I've had friends who become coaches. I think it's a very practical tool. Let's talk about how business owners can use it for themselves and for their teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's linked back to what we said before about knowing who we are. But when we know who we are, like in the context of strengths, it gives a language. So for example, I never realized how frustrating it can be that I gather all this information. And so input is one of the more unique Clifton strengths. It doesn't appear that often. But the thing with input is you get to a point where you've got enough information. And so I realized then by knowing that about myself, when people are working with me, it can be so frustrating if I'm continuously exploring new ideas or gathering more information. And so when you know that about yourself, you know then how you can lead better, because knowing that I'm like, okay, I've actually got enough information now, we can work with this and we can stick with it. So that was why I had to dial up my strategic more and go, okay, we've got what we've got. We know where we're going. We focused on it. I'm not going to continuously change what we're focusing on, because then otherwise your team are left going, okay, so are we focusing on that or are we focusing on that? And then they're obviously less productive and less efficient. So yeah, for me, that's where strengths was really, really powerful for me to understand myself. So in the context of another business owner, you know who you are, you can lead your team so much more effectively. And then you said you had communication in yours. So if I don't have communication in my top 10, I can lean into you and go, you know what, Luke, I've done this piece of whatever, let's say it's a post for LinkedIn. Could you cast your eye across this and just see if you would tweak it or amend it or change it? It's leveraging off what you're good at, because we're not all good at the same things.
Thank goodness.
No, and actually the one thing, when we are seen and heard and validated, we feel so much better about who we are. So we actually naturally up our game because we're being seen for and appreciated for what we bring to the table. So it lifts productivity, even though you might not go into it by doing it specifically to raise productivity, but it will if it's being utilized fully and in the way it's been designed to be used.
To make it super practical, we go take my team, we all do our strength finders. How do we best use that to make our team high, or quote unquote high performing, high value? How do we do that?
Okay, so how I run a team session unlocks so much understanding. So again, if I use your and my strengths as an example, so if I know you've got high belief, I know that if I need you to buy into something that I'm trying to convince you of, I need to shift your belief that you have right now on, I don't know, let's just say working from home, if we had to use that as an example, because you might think, no, we all need to be in the office. I don't know what you think, but I'm just using that as a hypothetical. And then if I want to convince you that we should be doing a hybrid, I need to shift your why. I'm like, okay, he's driven by belief. So I need to make sure that he buys into that belief. Mm-hmm. So
good luck, by the way.
It's not an easy belief, is a challenging. But as a strengths coach, you have to fall in love with all 34 of the strengths because they're all powerful when we use them without them tripping us up. But it's that. And if you knew what Alex's strengths were, if you knew what John's were, and they know yours. So we literally go around the room and we share. These are my top 5. We always start with the top 5 and then we unlock the 10 after that, because top 5 is where we pretty much do 90% of life or 80% of life. And then the others are supporting, or the top 10 are dominant. But we start with top 5. And the unlocks, I'll just give you anecdotal feedback that people go, oh my gosh, okay, so that's why that person responds in that way. And I always thought that they didn't like me or they were just trying to be difficult. And again, it's to the narratives that run through our head. And we go, no, it's their analytical strength coming through, their need for information, their need for data, their need for facts, their need for logic. Oh, that makes so much sense. Okay, now I know how to get the best out of you. I'm going to provide facts. I'm not going to come, if I've got high empathy, I'm not going to come with, this is how I feel about something. I'm going to back it up with business information, So it sounds so simple when I say it like this, but it really, it's powerful because people understand. And there's this sort of subversive, where people have started to feel like they've got a personal beef with each other, but they've never really spoken about it. And then there's that misunderstanding can actually slow things down. They were like, oh, I'm just going to wait a day before I reply to her email or his email.
Becomes passive aggressive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because then they were like, oh, so they didn't like me. But no, they didn't like the idea, but they didn't know how to express it. And their need is for you to hear the logic and the facts, and your need is to get going, like activator. I just like, okay, right, get to the point, let's go. No, but have we done our due diligence? Have we been deliberative enough? Have we weighed up all the risk? And that's where we can iron out so many frustrations that hold us back in terms of getting things across the line.
Let's not focus on the negatives and the downfalls and the pitfalls, which is where we tend to focus because we're humans and we need to survive to thrive. Well, we need to survive. So we're biologically wired to look for threats. So we constantly look for the negatives. But what I'm hearing you saying is that we look for the positives. We look for the strengths of each person in the team, and we play them off of each other not in a negative sense.
No, to leverage off them.
To leverage is a good word.
Yeah.
And to build a high-performing, high-value, high-impact team.
Yeah, if you go to Gallup's case studies on companies that have been using strengths for many years, they actually can show there's been 6 times more productivity and 6 times more engagement. Yeah. So there's a very clear bottom line return on investment. It's not, yes, it's touchy-feely, but we know that the soft skills are actually the hard skills and that everyone can do the work. It's not the work that's hard. It's how to navigate when we think, oh, there's a personality clash. But in fact, when we understand that person and where they're coming from and how they're wired, and we can go, oh, okay, right. Yes, that's a little bit frustrating for me because it's the opposite of how I'm wired, but I can work with this now that I understand them better. Yeah.
It's so interesting hearing that and I think that's one of the appeals of AI and using AI agents to do the work for you, because literally OpenAI is literally there to tickle your ears, and it's a path of least resistance. You don't have to navigate relationships. You don't have to navigate, I wonder what Kath's going to think if I ask her to do this. You don't have to navigate emotion. And that's one of my concerns around we use AI quite extensively in our workflows and stuff like that, but it's always coming back to, let's remember that we're human, and actually maybe some things humans should just do. And also not taking the path of least resistance. We have to engage socially. We have to, because when I learn to connect with you as a human, I have to do work inside of me too.
So the thing is, we can avoid it up until a point, and then something will happen to trip us up where we actually stopped in our tracks. And sometimes it's a life-changing event. It can be illness that can stop us. It can something happens that makes it go, okay, this is no longer serving me and I need to do things differently. And I actually do have to figure out why am I being triggered by that person and what is it in me that I need to look at. But there was something else that you said that I wanted to come back to, and it was around the conflict avoidance, but it was around AI. So the World Economic Forum have actually identified 10, they're calling them skills, but if I tell you what those skills are, you'll see that they are strengths. They are innate talents, but they are things that can be honed and developed. but they've identified the 10 top skills that are needed with AI taking away some of the manual, like you're saying, workflows. Yes, it makes sense to put some of the manual work through an AI tool because it speeds things up. But what AI can't replicate is critical thinking, creative thinking, empathy. So that thing about the human touch. And I'll send it to you afterwards. They're on the World Economic Forum's website. But if we look at the future and we go, best I master these personal things like learning to put myself in someone else's shoes, learning how to navigate conflict, because that AI cannot replicate. And we need it. The more AI is going to advance, the more we're going to be needing these human strengths.
Which you call soft skills, but I think it does a disservice.
No, I mean, I'm kind of saying that tongue in cheek, in inverted commas, because I definitely don't believe that they are soft.
No, they aren't soft skills, but we call them soft skills because we see them as secondary. It's like, no, can you do your hard skills well? But you can't do the hard skill without the soft skill. Yeah, that's very interesting. What are the top 3 things that we could do as business owners and team leaders to establish and build cultures of trust where our teams can thrive and they can trust one another?
Okay, so trust is definitely not built overnight. Okay, it's not built. So if anyone does want to go down this road, it's got to be consistent. And I mean, like I was saying to you, when I worked at Full and Clear Lab, we had a 5-year project because we're talking transformation and not transformation in the kind of, I don't know, let's say the political space, not that, but inner transformation, cultural transformation requires a whole different way of thinking and it requires consistency. So my thing is, if you're going to go down this road, it's a long-term commitment. And the first thing is to create psychologically safe spaces where I can say to you, gosh, Luke, I feel like your connectedness now is trying to join too many dots. Let's kind of step back. But that would be because if I was working in your team and we had trust, I would feel safe enough to say that to you. And I'm not going to think, oh, Luke thinks I'm trying to be mean or I'm trying to backstab him, or all of that then kind of just doesn't become an event. It's like not even it's a non-event, right? So people laugh when they've been in my sessions. Now that they've been in them a few times, they know that we're always going to sit in a circle. There aren't going to be any desks. And we physically remove any barriers. And I go, okay, right, this is uncomfortable for most people because we like to hide behind a desk. It's like the safety blanket in a way. So we remove all of that and go, okay, now we're going to really appear as our whole selves without any masks. And so in order to do that, there's got to be commitment. Like I joke and I say, right, you're going to kind of like write it in blood, at the end of we make what I call a community agreement, which is whatever stays in the space stays in the space. So we honor confidentiality. So we go down to values and we talk about what does respect mean for each other. Because at the heart of it, everybody wants to feel respected. They want openness, they want trust and confidentiality, but we've got to create it and we've got to contract to it. So we spend a good 3 hours doing that. And we unpack it. So what does it mean for you? What does it mean for Alex? What does it mean for John? And we go around the room and we go, okay, no one's here as the boss or the leader, or no rank, no title, and it's kind of left at the door. You come in as a human, like in that float tank like you were describing, just as who you are. And then we go, okay, right, this is great. We've sat in the bubble for 3 hours in this training room. Now we're going to go back into the workspace. But you've contracted to this, which means you've said, if you raise something with me, I'm going to understand you coming from a good place and there's no political agenda or backstabbing agenda. Okay. And then we've got to meet on a regular basis, like I say every 6 weeks for 3 hours until the trust is formed. So it's a big commitment. A lot of companies, I don't know, but as I say, I don't want to mention the clients' names, but we've had some big projects where they've committed to that over 5 years. Every team until the trust is built and that it's created a psychologically safe space where we can give honest feedback.
So in your experience, if you had to take a team or business of, say, 10 people, what would that look like?
Even in our own team, when we worked together in this old farmhouse out in Chartwell, we'd start our morning by having coffee at the kitchen table. And
sounds amazing.
Yeah. And it's as simple as that. It's a 30-minute check-in that you can do and say, before everyone goes off to their desks and starts their day. So if your day starts at 8, everyone can be there at 7:30. You make your tea and you make your coffee and you sit around the kitchen table and go, so Luke, how's your son today? How's Your mum, I heard you said yesterday that she wasn't well. Kazzy, how's your little doggy? I know your doggy means everything to you. Like, is your doggy okay? It's literally connecting on a human level. And they go, hey, I got my first 8 o'clock call. It's been great catching up. And then we all go back to our desks and we carry on with our day. But we've connected. So that's a simple way. I mean, it's really not a difficult thing to start the day with 30 minutes of coffee. Yeah.
One of the things we do, we do at our team meetings or our team syncs, is we do a check-in. So we share our one word, which is, what is the one word you're feeling right now? And it can be anything. It can be work-related, but it's a good way to ground yourself, I find. And so it's like, maybe my one word today is exhausted. Then it's like, okay, cool. And then we go around and we share that. So it just gives us an indication of where people are at and helps us connect on that level. And also, like, if any red flags come up, it's like, oh, and everyone understands, oh, actually, Luke's feeling exhausted today, so maybe he's not going to be on top game.
Yeah.
And if, I'm exhausted for 5 days in a row, then it's a point of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do what was yesterday's best or weekend's best. What's your one word today? And then we talk about, like, what our goals and objectives are.
Oh, that is amazing.
Very short, small way of doing it. But I do like the idea of team coffees.
Yeah, but a check-in is great. And you touched on something which is so important, because I don't want anyone out there thinking, oh, this is all like, I don't know, non-productive, let's say. Because when we get the people things out of the way, we can be productive. Because sometimes people feel like they can't bring their home stuff into the workspace and they can't take their work stuff home. So there's got to be an acknowledgement that we are whole people. So just by you sharing that you're exhausted, I can have a lot more empathy for you and maybe go a little bit lighter on you in the day. It doesn't mean that we excuse non-delivery or that non-delivery is okay. We're certainly not saying that. But it's about saying, okay, let me just be a little bit more compassionate. And I know you'll get there, but maybe you'll get there a little bit later in the day than my expectation of it being done in the morning.
I don't have to put so much pressure on you. Yeah. That's awesome. So connecting, coming back to the teams, is a big thing.
Yeah. Connecting
and establishing that culture of being open with and honest with yourself and those around you.
Yeah. And feeling safe to be able to do that. Yeah. That you're not going to be judged. So it goes back almost to the imposter syndrome. Like, if I speak up, or to the fear, they might think, why am I in this role if I don't know that? Well, if we just dispel all of that and go, we're all learning and we need each other. Actually, we really do need each other to be able to be the best version of ourselves.
Completely. That's awesome, man. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I don't know if I've given you enough tools.
Do you have more tools you'd like to share?
There's so many. I know that you did want me to share some tools. So I just wanted to make sure that.
So, okay, tools. We've got Gallup StrengthsFinder. What are some, like, really simple tools that we can use, such as, I don't know, a float session or...
Well, breathwork is not to be underrated. I mean, literally, we can regulate. It's called the psychological sigh. And I was actually reminded of it. I was on an online training earlier this week. And it's literally like, just that. And that can even help you regulate your nervous system. So if you're feeling triggered, I mean, that's such a simple thing. Someone's walked in and asked you a question and you're going, I don't know if I like that tone of voice. You can go, okay. Just give me a moment. And that's the other thing. I mean, like, we can just literally put it onto the table to say, okay, I'm going to think about what you've just said. That also, that moment of buying yourself a little bit of time before, so you can regulate and go, okay, let me respond as opposed to react to that. So it's giving ourselves the pause. It's a really simple thing. And breath work. I mean, there's box breathing, you breathe in for, count to 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold it for 4, also a really simple way of regulating our nervous system. I don't know, music. It's so different for everybody. You've got this beautiful space out here. I mean, obviously everyone's office spaces are different, but you could literally go outside, take your shoes off, walk on the grass for 2 minutes, ground yourself and come back.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is to come into the studio because it's mostly sound treated. Treated acoustically, so there's very little external stimulation. And it's like, okay, it's quiet. You can actually just hear yourself breathing. Yeah. So there are free versions of free tools that are really powerful.
Yeah. And you actually just said something so powerful too, because it's knowing yourself. So for you, you need the quiet. For someone else, it might be turning on some music and just, I love that you said, your kitchen is your dance floor, because we underestimate movement, and how literally moving can change how we feel about a situation instantly. Yeah. So it's knowing what works for you.
Yeah. I think for me, the journey of owning a business or trying to run a business has been a journey of self-discovery. And I keep saying that, I've said that episode after episode, and in almost every conversation I have about business, it really has created and provided an opportunity for me to figure out who I am. And I really want to encourage listeners and all you guys out there who own businesses, use every opportunity to figure out who you are and do the hard work. It's not easy. It's really difficult. It's like, why am I responding this way? Why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling that? Kath, maybe do you have 3 things? I haven't prepped you for this.
No, okay.
But do you have like a little activation we can do with the listeners? Like just a little exercise to help them and help us just become self-aware.
Okay.
It's on the spot.
It's all good. No, it's a good challenge.
Yeah.
So we could close our eyes, but we don't have to do that. But literally, it's about bringing our awareness into our body. So if people are listening, they can close their eyes. But it's making your awareness to come into, what can I hear? What can I see if your eyes are open? But what do I know is in my space? What can I smell? What can I taste? You might have had some coffee earlier. You might have had some breakfast, depending on where you are and what time of day they're listening to the podcast. What can you taste? So it's see, smell, hear. Potentially, what can you touch? What is the surface around you? Where are you? Yeah, and when you're ready, you can come back and then tell me what you felt.
It's been a very externally stimulating couple of days. We were at some events, and it's just been on the go, flying and driving and this and rushing here, rushing there. And it was just good to just zero in and just be aware of my surroundings. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, very cool. In fact, I was away this weekend with some girlfriends. It was a friend of ours' 50th birthday, and one of the friends was saying, guys, you're all talking about meditating. I am not able to meditate. And so maybe because what we just did literally could almost be seen as a small version of what meditation can do for us. And I always say meditation can be walking on the beach. Meditation can be riding your bike if you're a mountain biker. It can be dance, as long as we are not thinking. So like when you were in the flow tank and you could just be, and this moment brought you into being, it can literally be as simple as, okay, I'm choosing to focus on the red lid of this, and I'm not going to think about anything else other than, okay, that's the color red, and that's it. That's how simple it is to bring ourselves back into kind of calming our nervous system. Yeah,
I think as business owners, we are very we have the tendency to become very dysregulated, and it becomes a cycle of stress, dysregulation, stress.
And in our head, we are in our head so much. Yeah. So literally, that's why, exercise, it brings us back into our body, and why meditation, it brings us back into our body. And that's when we can then get perspective on something that might have happened and see it from a different, just see it from a different perspective.
Yeah, go for a run and figure out your problem.
Yeah,
you have got to work it out your body.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've had also friends and clients share this with you. They'll say, my best ideas come to me when I'm running, or my best ideas come to me exactly. Because why? Because we're quiet and we don't have our phones. Our devices really do take us down so many different rabbit holes.
That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. That's awesome. Kath, thank you so much. Is there anything we didn't cover that you'd like to share with us?
Wow, I don't know. I feel like we spoke about a lot of things, but I think maybe with the parting thought that I would like to leave people with is this whole thing about the inner game. You know, we can only be the best version of ourselves when we do the inner work. And I mean, I haven't shared all my personal stories, but I'm really happy to talk to anyone who is interested in knowing how I went from, because I went from a place that wasn't a great place, you know, and that we can rewrite our story at any stage of our lives. We can rewrite it this minute if we choose to, you know, and, you know, and then maybe it's a whole nother podcast, which is our journey with God. You know, that has been a big part of me re-identifying who I am in Him, you know, but then that's very personal, you know, not everyone has that same belief system, but it's, yeah, my encouragement would be do the inner work. It's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely worth it.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. Where can we find you, and where can listeners get in touch with you if they would like some guidance, and if, maybe you can help them along with some strength coaching? Where can they find you?
So I have a LinkedIn profile, Katherine Bekker-Smith. It's BEKKER-Smith. And I am in the process of creating a new website.
Cool.
Yes. So I didn't have one that could show what Soul Center could do and what Katherine Bekker-Smith could do. And so now that I've walked this branding journey with Katherine Tucker, who does branding from the inside out, and that's where our paths have interconnected, I now can put my website together. So
that's awesome.
Watch the space.
Yeah.
But yeah, Soul Center's on Instagram. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook. And I've never really had a very strong social media presence. That's going to change.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing with us and being so open.
Oh,
and
it's such a pleasure, Luke.
Yeah. Guys, thank you for listening. And go do the deep work, and we'll see you in the next episode.